That's an average of about 3 balls per golfer. There are 45,000 rounds annually. If that average number of lost balls seems on the high side, you are missing
and
two
welcome
key
to this
points.
first hole, par 4.
Most of the
Let's have a good time out
recreational
there.
golfers approaching the 17th tee have watched many pros fail to reach the green on TV, and that automatically makes the task at hand impossibly intimidating. Some people, I have been told, will dunk 6, 8, or 12 golf balls in the lake, which skews the average. As daunting a challenge as it has been, the 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass has become such a notable golf phenomenon that golf courses have been replicating it by the dozens for the last 3 decades. But if you don't like this trend, it's not enough just to blame Pete and Alice's design room. The truth is that before the advent of better club and ball technology, island greens were not feasible. Before 1980, there might have been only a handful in America. Why? Because they were considered too hard. Now you tell us this. Like many other things in golf, the history of island greens summons a mild dispute. It is not, for example, entirely clear what constitutes an island green.
Hope this one bites.
Throughout the last century, it was not unusual for designers to carve small moats around greens, or to redirect a creek into a trough built to envelop a green. These greens were now technically on islands, but maybe not in the sense that most golfers equate with an island green. To be what most consider an island green, it should be in a lake or pond or other large body of water, said the golf architect Mike Herdzan, a noted golf course historian and author of 6 books on golf architecture. And those kinds of greens weren't common at all for many decades. Herdzan said true island greens were not a feature borrowed from the centuries of European golf design. He said, "The 9th hole on the golf course at Florida's Ponte Vedra Inn and Club was generally recognized as the first island green, although there might have been others. The hole at the Ponte Vedra Resort, which is not far from the TPC Sawgrass, is still in use."
Even par after the first hole.
This being golf, there is always room for another reading of the green.
Okay,
and indeed,
hole number 2.
There is evidence that the 10th hole on the original course at the famed Bolterol Golf Club in New Jersey had what was called the island green. Pictures reveal it as more of a circular green surrounded by a moat. It was a popular par 4, although when the 1904 United States Amateur Championship was played at the course, a delegation of members deemed the island green unfair. An adjacent green was used for play instead. The ball used then did not have the aerodynamics that made it fly, and the clubs had a sweet spot about the size of a dime, Hertzan said.
Great contact.
Golfers were forced
swing.
to play a lot of shots that bounced and rolled. It was hard to bounce the ball off water. The Bolterol Island green disappeared in the 1918 rebuilding of the course by A.W. Tillinghast. During the Great Depression and the World War II years, it's unlikely many island greens were constructed anywhere, Hertzan said. No one had the money. Without modern bulldozers, island greens were expensive to construct and posed other logistical issues, like how to get grass mowers and irrigation systems out to the greens. The consensus is that the next indisputable island green surfaced in 1963 at Golden Horseshoe Golf Club in Williamsburg, Virginia, a course designed by Robert Trent Jones, Sr. Jones, incidentally, worked on a redesign of Ponte Vedra in 1947. The 16th hole at the Golden Horseshoe, set in a pond, deserves the credit for introducing the island green concept to designers of the next era, Hertzan said. In the service industry, I visited the venerable Golden Horseshoe not long ago to play the renowned 16th hole, a par 3 of about 155 yards, with a tee box looming over the green from an elevated plateau. Although the green is large, because it is positioned late in the round, it begins to weigh on your mind early in the day. They say the PGA pros at the Players' Championship start thinking about the 17th hole as soon as they can see it from the tee at number 16. I started thinking about Golden Horseshoe's
10-footer
island
here.
green
This is makeable.
when I put on my golf shoes in the parking lot. I asked for help in the locker room, in the pro shop, and at the snack shack on the course. I even asked advice of the guy impersonating George Washington at nearby Colonial Williamsburg. But of course, when that moment comes, you're all alone. It's just you, the club in your hand, and those quivering knees under your belt. And all that water. Glenn Burns, the director of golf at the Golden Horseshoe, told me a longtime Navy officer once said after playing his course's 16th hole, "I've seen oceans that looked smaller." Well, I didn't hit the ball in the water off the tee, but in the spirit of George Washington, I won't tell a half-truth. Afraid of
Third
the
hole
water and
coming
the
up.
chance I might hit it fat, I took an extra club and, of course, hit it flush. It soared over the green until it hit the wooden bridge behind the green that links it to the rest of the course. It bounced far away to solid ground. Okay, it still wasn't anywhere near the island green, but I'm claiming a small victory. As I said, though, I have sought professional advice on how to
This
handle the hitting
one's
over
looking
water
dialed
situation.
in.
Chuck Cook, rated one of the nation's top 10 golf teachers and the coach of several major championship
for birdie.
winners, offered this tip. Tee the ball up a bit higher, at least the thickness of a full finger above the ground, said Cook, who runs a golf academy at the Barton Creek Resort and Spa in Austin, Texas. It's a confidence thing, because it just looks easier to clip the ball off the tee. Most golfers normally try to hit up on the ball to lift it, which, of course, is the last thing you want to do. If it's already teed up, they don't try to lift it. It already looks inviting. Remember, golf is a game of opposites. If you want the ball to go up, hit down on it. The late Pat Dolan, a longtime golf pro in Texas who schooled a number of top pros, including Lee Trevino,
And with that,
used to tell
you
his students
will
to try to
stay
hit
at
the
even
ball
par.
into the water with a downward swing, as if they were trying to hit a ground ball in
Okay,
baseball.
this is the fourth hole.
Hitting the ball down, of course, meant a strike that allowed the lift in the club to send the ball into the air and over the water. So Pat Dolan used to tell his students when faced with water, aim for the water. Try it. You'll be surprised. It works. Then again, I've heard the opposite advice that makes sense, too. In 2008 in California, I was at a Nike-sponsored clinic Tiger
Solid
Woods
swing.
conducted. Tiger told the roughly 25 golfers standing around the practice tee that, as a young boy, he had experienced some trouble with shots over water. He said his father
In case you haven't
gave
noticed, the
him
ball's
this
sitting a
tip
little
that brought
above your
quick
feet
success and a
on this shot.
lifetime of confidence in the situation. My dad said to pick a specific spot on the green to hit to, and to really home in on that specific spot. Woods said, "You might not hit that spot, but you'll probably get in the vicinity, at least close enough to be happy with the outcome. But it's essential to have a specific goal in mind. Without a specific goal, most golfers facing water instead think, hit it anywhere but the water. Or they think, just hit it over the water.
Nice.
In either case, they are thinking about the water, not the green, not a spot, not a target, not a goal. My dad knew that if I focused on the goal, eventually the water would become an afterthought, and it always has been. I might still miss a shot and put it in the water, but only because I missed my target, not because I saw the water. In other words, imagine if you were shooting free throws in basketball, and the first 10 feet from the free throw line toward the basket was a trough filled with water. Would it make it harder to at least get the ball close to the basket?
Someone's going to need to
Maybe
bite.
if you had never played basketball or hadn't taken a free throw in 10 years, but
Nice.
if you
Way to
had
stick the
any
green.
basketball
Okay, a
experience,
23
sort
footer
of like
from
any
here.
golf experience, you would focus on the basket and launch the ball toward it. You wouldn't even look at the water. The mindset, Woods says, should be the same when hitting over water. There is other advice that seems elementary, but few golfers know it or use it. For instance, when you get the yardage for a hole and calculate what is the appropriate club for that distance, take one club longer instead, If you think it's a natural 7-iron, drop down to a 6-iron. This gives you the confidence to swing easy, as opposed to feeling like you must force the swing.
Okay, let's see what you can
The
do
worst
with this
thing you can do
7-footer.
is think you have to hit it hard to get the ball there. A more patient, relaxed swing is likely if you are sure you have enough club to get the ball over the water. If this leads you to consistently knock the ball over the green, you can scale back.
Nice putt, you're in
But
there.
more club is a security blanket. And should you suffer from the occasional mishit, not you, I know, but should it happen, extra club might help the ball still clear the water.
All right, let's pop this in the fairway.
Dave Ledbetter, the noted instructor and former coach to Nick Faldo and Nick Price, tells students at his golf academies to untie their shoes and loosen their belts when hitting over water. What does that do? Untying your shoes promotes excellent balance and good rhythmic weight transfer, Ledbetter said. It keeps the swing from getting quick in the backswing or the downswing. You have to have a smooth pace, and that's good for any shot on flat ground, but certainly suitable to a shot
Man,
over
did you
water.
ever launch that?
And loosening the belt? Oh, that does nothing, Ledbetter said. That's just to distract them. If the students think their
Now we
pants
are
might
looking
fall
at around
down,
185
the water is
yards
the
to the
least of
pin.
their worries. Don't you love expert golf instruction? Finally, as for the old home cure of switching to a cheap ball so you don't worry about losing it, it doesn't work. I have done that dozens of times and almost always put it in the water. It is the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy. I have found that if I keep the expensive ball on the tee, I'm showing confidence in myself. And there's always the financial incentive, too. The finesse pitch shot over a bunker to a green. If water brings anxiety,
Sweet.
then the little
Looking at a
25-yard pitch
19-foot
over a
putt from
bunker
here.
brings a foreboding sense of gloom and a dark capitulation to the inevitable. Your ball may be resting harmlessly in the grass a few yards in front of a greenside bunker, but sizing up this situation, you will make sure to bring along your sand wedge as you approach the ball, even if a sand wedge is not the club you plan to use for the next stroke. That's because you fear what club you might need next, and it's not a putter. In fact, sometimes you probably forget to bring the putter at all. What makes this shot hard is again the obvious. Instead of staring at an expanse of water, you can't overlook the sand in your path. You've been told to open your club and swing relaxed. You've been told to shorten your backswing, or maybe to lengthen it. You've been told to
Okay,
make
about an
a slow,
18-footer here.
rhythmic downswing, or a quick dynamic one. You've been told to use a lob wedge, because you're just lobbing it over the bunker. Maybe you've even been told to visualize throwing the ball over the bunker underhand with your right hand. And maybe you've done this when no one was looking. So you've been told a lot of things for what is truly not, at face value, a difficult shot. Still, whatever you've been told, a lot of bad things usually happen.
All right,
Most
one over
notably,
for the
a
round.
stubbed chip that strikes the ground behind the ball. It's a shot hit with
put
just
this ball
enough
down
force
in the
to deposit
fairway.
the ball in the sand. If only there were some simple advice that worked. Right? More than 5 years ago, Butch Harmon gave me instruction on how to hit this shot. I have used it like magic ever since. I remember his first words to me when I asked for help with this situation. "Oh, that's easy," he said. "You can do it one-handed." And that's what Butch had me do.
I can't hit all the fairways.
About a year later, I found out that his father, the great instructor Claude Harmon, who also won the 1948 Masters, was on the cover of Golf Digest, demonstrating a version of this lesson 45 years ago. So was his son in 2000. It goes like this, in Butch's words. Drop about 10 practice balls in front of the bunker and take your most lofted club. Now, put more weight on your front foot. Your left foot if you're right-handed. Not a little weight. More like at least 70%. Then take the club with just your right
Nice
hand
swing.
and hit down on the ball. The ball just pops up and settles on the green. Too many people keep their weight back and try to
All right,
lift
we're in the
the ball
first cut
with an
here.
upward
Let's
stroke. That's
chip
what
this bad
causes
boy on the
fat
green.
or sculled shots. Once people see how easy it can be with the right technique, weight forward and hit down on the back of the ball, they relax. Just hit down. It'll go up and over. It works. In any lie. Yes, I can hear you saying that might work if I have a decent amount of green to play with. The shot Butch suggests will settle on the green, but perhaps with some run-out. Granted, that's usually plenty good enough. But what if the situation is more ticklish? What if I have to hit a true flop shot? You know, when there's a bunker between the ball and the green, but there is very little green on that side to work with. Admittedly, this is a common amateur golfer problem,
Seventh hole
because
coming
we
up.
often miss greens on the wrong side, which is to say the side that leaves us with the most trouble to overcome. Why do we do this? Come on, how do I know? Why do we exist? If Jean-Paul Sartre had played golf, his famous existentialist play, No Exit, would have been about the pointlessness of trying to execute the flop shot over a bunker to a tight, small green. But since Sartre died in 1980, it's unlikely he ever met Annika Sorenstam. She would have been about 9. Annika knows how to get out of this situation successfully, and she has a method
Okay,
you
you're
can
kind of
use as
in
well.
some deep stuff. This
First
is
of
the
all,
danger zone.
when I talked to her about this feared shot, she conceded it requires a different technique from the one Harmon talked about. I like Butch's advice for most of these kinds of shots, but sometimes you do have to try something that employs a little more touch, she said. I have 3 tips, or observations. Most amateurs play this shot with the ball back in their stance. I suggest playing it forward and keeping your weight and hands back. Take the club back
All right, let's
slowly,
get out of this
but
rough and onto
accelerate
the
on the
green
downswing.
here.
You must confidently follow through. Set up the shot with the heel of your front foot an inch off the ground, and leave it an inch off the ground as you practice the shot, or maybe as you hit on the golf course. This is to ensure that you do not make a normal transfer of weight from the back foot to the front foot during the swing. That is a good, even essential move for full shots or chips, but it de-lofts the club in a flop shot. So practice keeping your front heel off the ground throughout the swing. A smiling Sorenstam then added, make a full finish and smile when the ball lands
Okay, let's
soft
see what
and
you can
safe.
do with his 8-footer.
And I would add one more thing. The next time you approach one of these shots, make sure you bring your putter, and only your putter, with you. First tee jitters. You're on the first tee of a member-guest tournament. You're the guest, and your friends' buddies are standing around,
Nice putt
waiting
there.
as you warm up. Already, you feel as if your golf swing is being silently
Okay, so
analyzed
that'll keep
for
you
proper
at
technique.
1 over for the round.
You want to do well, and the first tee is a symbolic
Coming
moment.
off a par on the
practice
last one.
range a
Let's
few
see what
minutes
happens
earlier,
here.
you felt smooth and confident. But now the first tee feels a world apart, full of tension and nerves. Worse, you just noticed that the windows of the pro shop and clubhouse dining room face the first tee box. Is everybody within 5 miles watching this tee shot? What if you hit a big, embarrassing slice? What if you dribble it? What if... Oh no, you whiff it. They call this the first tee jitters, which sounds a bit wimpy for something so disquieting. In the theater, they give it a beefy name: stage fright. In golf, we ought to call it first tee terror. It's one of golf's most common maladies, and even the great Tiger Woods has admitted to having it. Trevino
no good.
once said the only people on the first tee of a PGA Tour event who weren't nervous were the volunteers keeping score. Gary Player says he has meditated on the first tee. Ben Hogan forced himself to slow his every movement. On the first tee in Caddyshack, Rodney Dangerfield tells Ted Knight, a.k.a. Judge Smales, "I bet you slice into the woods, $100. Responds Knight, "Gambling is illegal at Bushwood, sir, and I never slice." And we all know what happens. What's
In the rough, but close to the
source
green.
of
Let's
all
chip
this
this on and
angst
start
and
putting.
edginess? And what can be done about it? It's simply another common staging ground for that continuing golf conundrum. It's almost too easy, which makes it so hard. The ball, after all, is not only not moving, It is propped high on a tee. There is usually not water in the way on the first tee, as few designers are that cruel. In fact, designers usually make the driving area on the first tee rather generous. You don't have a score yet, not a single stroke, which also means the whole wonderful day is ahead of you. And yet, you feel a subtle but definable pressure. It is typical golf pressure, trying to do the eminently doable. There is no shortage of advice on how to perform admirably in this setting. Dano
And
Rader
that'll keep
preached
you at
a
one
first tee
over for the
philosophy
round.
I have dubbed golf avoidism. And her first target is the
All right,
oft-taught
let's
pre-shot
let her
routine.
rip.
Rader doesn't mind if you have one, but she believes golfers shouldn't do them standing alongside the golf ball. The idea is to keep the mind quiet. You don't want to be having any conversations with yourself standing over the ball, said Rader. So on the first tee, where there's already tension, the last thing you want is to be standing next to the ball for a long time. Get away from the ball. Go stand a couple steps behind it. Then look at the target and breathe through your nose.
Heading towards the beach here.
Think
Not
about
the good
someplace
kind.
calm, or think about what you're going to do for dinner that night. Take one practice swing. Make everything feel as normal as possible, like you felt on the practice range. Then, with a quiet mind, go walk to the ball and hit the shot. Asked if that produces good results, Rader laughed. Absolutely, she said. People thinking about the beach off the first tee always stripe one down the middle. There were several pros in the don't linger over the ball camp. I tell my students to step on the first tee, take a practice swing about 3 inches from the ball, immediately step closer and hit it, said Harmon. There shouldn't be any more thought than that.
Well, you have a
The other
decent
thing I tell
round
them
going
is
after
this.
9. Not
No
amazing,
one
but
watching
not
cares
bad.
what you do. Golfers
Okay,
are
let's put
too
this drive
worried
in the
about what
fairway.
other people will think of them. No one cares. The other people are busy worrying about their own first shot. Okay, so it's obvious not letting your mind race is helpful, but is it that easy? Not for everyone. So some teachers had clever tips for defusing the tension. I tell people to take in the scenery because the first tee is usually an attractive spot with a view, said Ben Alexander, who operates a golf academy at Poppy Hills Golf Course in Pebble Beach, California. It's a game, right? Be happy you're out there. Brian Jones, director of instruction at the David Glenn's Golf Academy in Long Valley, New Jersey,
Looks like
said he
you're gonna hit
encourages
some
students to
sand
do a
here.
little homework first, making a visit to any golf course to watch other people tee off. Take 45 minutes to watch 4 or 5 groups hit off the first tee, and you won't be worried about how you look anymore, Jones said. You might come away feeling pretty good about your ability level. Eddie Merins, the charismatic pro at Bel Air Country Club, has for years advised golfers waiting on the first tee to toss a golf ball a few inches in the air and then catch it. He says it has an almost hypnotic effect when done over and over and promotes a subliminal confidence.
Okay, that takes you down
Other
to even
teachers
par.
felt
Nice.
that first tee troubles actually start long before the ceremonial first tee box.
Okay, let's send this little ball on its way.
People should eat the right foods in the morning, then get to the golf course early so they're not rushing around, says Kylie Nafzinger at the Bridger Creek Golf Course in Bozeman, Montana, who was a finalist for the 2008 PGA Teacher of the Year. I see people arrive 5 minutes before their tee time. Would a baseball or basketball player arrive 5 minutes before a game, hop out of the car, and expect to perform well? The overriding consensus was that golfers should warm up on the range slowly, focused on tempo and rhythm only. It's not the right time to start
looking
working
good.
on some new tip you received, Alexander said. I've talked to a few sports psychologists about this situation.
Looking
Bob
at around
Rotella, who wrote the
115
bestseller
or
Golf
so
is Not a
yards
Game
of pin
of Perfect,
here, I'd say.
and who remains a fixture on the PGA Tour as a mental guru to dozens of players, preaches clearing your mind and visualizing a straight shot into the verdant landscape. He suggests seeing that shot early, like during the drive to the golf course. One thing that works for most people is thinking about tempo, Rotella said. Slow down. Just try to be smooth or fluid. It's important
Now
to
that was
try
a
to
swing.
not overdo anything. Keep your equilibrium. Rotella had another overriding suggestion. Be reasonable and don't make too
And
much of
for
it,
the bird.
he said. It's just one swing of many that day. Keep it in perspective. Millions of people have shot 75 or better with a poor first tee ball. Dr. Wayne Glad, the Illinois clinical psychologist who has worked extensively with college and pro athletes, including golfers, also believes golfers put too much emphasis on the meaning of the first shot. It goes back to people's sense of worth and their ego, Dr. Glad said. They don't want to lose face or be embarrassed. The first tee shot is very ceremonial in that way. But everyone who has ever played golf has hit that shot poorly at one time or another. Golfers understand. Everyone has been there. No one will overly judge you based on what happens on the very first tee shot. So do your best. Stay
12th
calm.
hole coming up.
And don't
Take your
rush
best
it.
shot.
Hit it and move on. Say to yourself that you will smile afterward regardless of what happens. If you don't make too much of it going in, most likely you will surprise yourself and do pretty well. And in the end, if nothing else works, be thankful you're not a tour pro who has to tee off with thousands of people enveloping the tee box. Tom Joyce, the director of golf at Glen Oaks Club on Long Island,
Great
had
contact.
a long
Nice
career
swing.
as a top competitive golfer. He recalled when he made the cut in the 1973 United States Open at Oakmont Country Club.
All right, we're right
Having
around
made his way through the
125
crowd
yards
to
out.
start his third round, he arrived at the first tee and saw that fans several rows deep lined both sides of the first fairway. I said to myself, my God, I'm going to kill somebody. Joyce told me years ago. My knees were shaking, and I felt my breathing getting short, and then I just blanked out. I don't remember hitting that ball. I still don't remember. My muscles took over and knocked it into the fairway.
Solid swing.
So there you have it. Hit it before thinking. Try hypnosis. Or perhaps just blank
Oh,
out.
you're getting there. You're getting there. You're in the
Sounds
rough,
like
but we're
golf to
close to
me.
the green.
Lag putting. That first long putt on a green. It's really not the first putt that's the problem. It's the putt that's left after the first putt. The one that's too far away to likely go in the hole. The problem with the first long putt is the scary notion that a three-putt is coming, and a three-putt green is the most frustrating outcome in golf. Well, other than four-putting. And that starts with a bad first putt, too. I have heard all kinds of advice on how to be a better long or lag putter.
And
I
that'll
recall
keep
when I was
you
10 years
at
old
even
reading
par.
a Golf
Nice.
Digest cover story by Jack Nicklaus, in which he talked about imagining
Okay,
the
it's
hole
time
as
to
having
send
a
this
3-foot
ball on
ring
its
around
way.
it, and your only job was to get the ball inside the 3-foot ring. Sounds simple enough. If you're Jack Nicklaus. While short putts are strangely daunting because they are so inherently simple, long putts can be difficult. Because let's face it, a lot can go wrong in the 40 or 50 feet you have to get the ball to travel.
I think
And
this
yet,
is going to need to bite.
if you had to bend down and roll the ball across the green with your
Okay,
hand,
I think you'll be two putting
you
from
could
here.
probably
All
get
right,
it fairly
14
close
feet
to the hole, especially with practice. Why is that? The answer is because we would use more instinctual coordination than learned, or overlearned, golf skills. We would be relying on athletic intuition and not the mathematics of the putting stroke. We also allow our eyes to remain focused on the target, and that lets our brain use a steady stream of visual information to get the ball close to the hole. This realization, and the study and understanding of it, is the premise behind a breakthrough putting technique that has already helped many golfers and will
And
probably
with
help
that,
many more in the
you
years to
will
come.
stay at even par.
This putting system, in essence, preaches looking at the
14th
hole
hole.
when you putt instead of looking at the ball. Importantly, it's worth noting that this technique is also based on the green testing with golfers of all handicaps and sound applied athletic science theory. It does take a leap of faith, but if you keep an open mind, it can unquestionably improve your lag putting. I've tried it successfully for the last several years, but let's start where most golfers start, facing that
Whoa,
first
you
long putt
smashed that.
on a green. They size up the putt, and once they get over the ball, they look at the hole several times, turning their eyes from
Looking
the
at
ball
around
to the hole.
155 yards out from
Eventually, they fix their gaze on the ball and, eventually, putt the ball in the direction of where they remember the hole to be. Let's back up and compare this to other sports. When you play pool, do you look at the cue ball just before a shot, or the ball you want the cue ball to hit? If you play basketball, when you are about to take a
Solid
shot, do
swing.
you look at the ball in your hands? If you play baseball or softball and have to throw to first base, do you look at the ball in your hand as you're throwing it?
here. And
Or
you're
do
on the
you look
green
at the
with
first
a
baseman?
very long putt.
If
in
you
your
are playing
future.
darts, do you stare at the dart in your hand? Or do you look at the bullseye? Okay, so you know where this is going. Now I can hear your questions. But in baseball or tennis, when I hit the ball, I don't look at where I want it to go. I look at the ball. Well, of course you do. In baseball and tennis, the ball is moving, perhaps at 70 or 90 miles an hour. In golf, the ball isn't moving. The next most common comment is that in darts, or in the act of throwing a baseball or softball, the thrown object is in your hand. In golf, it is not. Yes, but in golf, you set the putter up against the ball and align yourself right next to it. This is the leap of faith I mentioned earlier. Many people fear that if they take their eye off the golf ball when
Okay,
putting,
here we
it will
go.
cause a disastrous mishit. But what would you think if I told you there was proof that people putt better, even significantly better, when they look at the hole, the target, instead of the ball? What if some of the best golf teachers in the land recommended this method? What if it was by far the easiest way to alleviate the yips and also a cure for chronically poor putting from long distances? Would you try it?
Nice.
Chances are you may still think it sounds daffy and you would be embarrassed to try it in front of your friends. Right. As if it's not already embarrassing enough to three-putt 4 times in one round.
I'd say it's
And
about
does anyone
120
really
yards
need
or
to
so to the
remind
pin
you
from
that
here.
putting can account for about 40% of the strokes in an average round? About 99% of my students putt better looking at the hole. Dana Rader, the teacher, told me. I make all my students try it, and they are amazed. When you look away from the target and stand over the ball for too long, your brain actually loses its memory of how hard to hit the ball. And sometimes
Doesn't
where
look like
to
it's
hit
on the
it
fairway,
too.
but it's all right.
Because putting prowess may be the most elusive of golf's skills, people have been experimenting with various putting techniques for centuries. But in the last 8 years, the effectiveness of looking at the hole while putting has been researched and painstakingly analyzed by Eric Alpenfels, another top-rated instructor and the director of the Pinehurst Golf Academy, and Bob Christina, the Dean Emeritus of the School of Health and Human Performance at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. In 2002, at the behest of Golf Magazine, Alpenfels and Christina conducted a field test using 40 golfers with a range of handicaps. At the time, Alpenfels and Christina were convinced that people who looked at the hole would putt worse. These were people who spent 20 or 25 years looking at the ball, Christina said. We gave them 45 minutes of practice looking at the hole, and then started charting and measuring the results. I expected a negative effect. Instead, golfers of all handicaps
9-footer
putted
here.
more effectively. From long distances, golfers looking at the hole hit the ball 24% closer. More short putts went in as well, though the improvement was less pronounced. If Alpenfels and Christina weren't convinced at first, they were after they did additional testing over several years.
Well, I'm glad
In
you
2008,
sunk that one. That's
Alpenfels
for
and
bogey.
Christina wrote a book, Instinct
1 over
Putting,
for the
that
round.
summarized their findings and gave a detailed plan of how to convert to what remains an
16th hole coming up
unorthodox
here.
approach.
Let us see what you can do.
Both Alpenfels and Christina emphasized that it didn't take much practice to learn to putt better their way. Christina estimated that golfers would see improvement in 45 minutes and added, if they practice more, they will improve more. Among other findings, Alpenfels and Christina observed that golfers who looked at the hole kept a steadier posture during their stroke.
Boom.
In other
Just
words,
boom.
they were less likely to move their head, perhaps the most common putting mistake. In addition, people who looked at the hole were less likely to decelerate the putter head before impact.
Okay, you're
The
about
other major
140
putting
yards
mistake.
out here.
The scientific explanation of why it is more effective to look at the target is that the brain more successfully interacts with the muscles of the shoulders, arms, and hands with a continuous flow of visual information. That is, the brain knows where the hole is because you are looking at it. But the second you take your eyes off the target, the brain has to interact with the muscles based on its memory of where the hole is. And then there is the aforementioned athletic intuition, which is more likely to come into play
On the green
when
with
you're looking
some work to
at
do.
the target. As for the fear of missing the ball with the putter head, it doesn't happen, especially with practice. I've tried it. If anything, it's a mental relief not to be tensely staring down, transfixed by ball and putter. But don't take my word for it. Lots of top teachers advocate the method, even in the ultra-competitive golf instruction market. There has been little or no criticism of Alpenfels and Christina's conclusions. I polled 10 of Golf Digest's top 20 golf teachers, and all of them said they believed in the method's merits, especially for very poor putters. As a method, it might just be gaining acceptance, said Jim Sutty, a top 10
so
rated
that'll
teacher.
keep you at
In the
1
future,
over for the round.
I think you'll see more people doing it. So why haven't
Coming
some
off a
top
par
touring
on the last
professionals
one.
looked
Let's
at
see
the
what
hole
happens
instead
here.
of the ball? Some pros have tried it, even in competition, most notably Johnny Miller. But that's going back a lot of years. Top pros probably don't try it for the same reason that most recreational golfers haven't tried it. It's a real leap of faith to look away from the ball, Alpenfels said. It's also relinquishing direct conscious control of the putter head, and that scares people. But when people try it, the result is positive. But it's hard to pull the trigger and try it under the pressure of high-level competition. I would agree, but most recreational players aren't under that much pressure, and yet we still can't putt. Could we really do that much worse? You don't even have to change your putting stroke. All you have to do is look away from a ball that isn't moving. How hard can it be? Well, over the years I've written a few articles in the New York Times about this method. In 2010, one of those columns was posted on our On Par
This one for
blog,
the save.
and some people reacted as if I were proposing we all start putting using a hockey stick while riding a unicycle. This cannot work, and it would only screw up your putting forever. A man from Alabama wrote, "It's a gimmick and a hoax." Wrote Seth from Texas, "Next you'll tell me to close my eyes." You can't compare putting to shooting a basketball. Putting is so much more difficult, according to Frank in New Jersey. And Harold, who said he was a psychologist in Florida, wrote, "Bill, your need to look away from the ball reveals a strong streak of irrational escapism or a desire to abandon basic responsibility. Don't do it, Bill. See the ball and hit it." I think he was kidding. I think. I know from the rest of my mail that most other people
Sitting
were not
at
kidding.
2 over for the
They would
round.
not dare try looking at the hole. So I agree with Harold that there is something
All right.
being revealed
Put
here.
this in the fairway.
How scared and confused putting renders us. What I saw as most pertinent in these reactions was that so many were ignoring the obvious, which is that the results of the Alpenfels and Christina study reflected years of research conducted, backed up by the experience of dozens of top teaching instructors working in the field. The documented facts are that people do better when looking at the hole. We've all
that was
been
a swing.
putting pretty much one way for decades, even centuries. So it is normal for any radical new way of doing something to be opposed and greeted with skepticism. People often don't believe the data or the results of new
And
ideas,
we have about,
even though they have not
I'd say
tried the new method.
140-ish yards from here.
Looking at the hole seems odd and sounds like it won't work. The researchers admitted to the same pre-study belief. But the funny thing is that it does work for most people. So, should everyone who has any difficulty putting, and if people are honest, that is a vast majority of the
Nice
golfing
swing.
population, at least try it? Yes, they probably should. Chances are they will be surprised and find it valuable, especially with long putts, or at the very least as
All
a
right, this
training
next one's
aid.
for birdie.
It's just an idea. Give it a try. Don't make me go get my hockey stick and unicycle. Playing a recovery shot from the woods. When I began playing golf, I was in the woods so much my golf pro was a raccoon. He was the only one who had seen me swing more than once a hole. The point is this. If you're going to play golf, unless you are a 5 handicap or better, you are going to spend a fair amount of time in the woods. You might as well get comfortable
Perfect.
there. Think of the woods as your friend. Do they not sometimes deflect
Good
your
job.
very
One over
wayward
par
shots
today.
back into play?
Well